All right. Doing history today, the never-ending war. Same thing as always. You will find it under your classroom, questions and the reading and everything. Okay. No video other than the classroom video. All right, Miller. Why don't you step outside and collect yourself, Hot Rod? Okay, you're having a little bit of trouble here. Okay, we're gonna let you step out. You talk all the time, you get thirsty. Okay? All right. We're talking about how it's a never-ending war. Now, the war only lasts 3 years, 1 month. So, I mean, it does end. But what they're talking about, this thing is back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's what they're talking about, okay? And that's what we're going to kind of get into a little bit today. It's not that the war never ended. In fact, 3 years, 1 month, that's long enough, okay? But yeah, compared to Vietnam and Afghanistan, Iraq right now, that's nothing. That's a cakewalk compared to what these guys are going through now, okay? Not that this was easy. I'm certainly not downplaying this, okay? Not at all. The UN forces under General MacArthur in Korea was on top of the game. They had driven deep into communist North Korea. It did look like a done deal. It seemed like just a matter of time before Korea was reunited under a non-communist system. Okay, remember we had pushed them back well into North Korea. Okay, I mean we have taken back South Korea. We are now into North Korea, and we are continuing to push North Korea back.
I bet one of the guys said when they were falling back, "Oh, here's my house."
Probably. The issues weren't as clear-cut as they seemed, however. The conflict in Korea became a prickly problem because another player was about to come into the picture. I love the terminology here. Like an underground tremor from a giant mountain, rumbling had come from China on the issue of Korea. Western forces must not cross Koreans' dividing line, they said. And if China would take such a crossing as a challenge to its safety, so the vast armies of the people of the Republic of China would be sent in. So they're not saying, if you come into China, we're going to defend ourselves. What they're saying is, if you come across the 38th parallel into North Korea, we're going to consider that a threat. Well, guess where we are? We're past the 38th parallel into Korea. Okay? So, Truman was kind of upset about the threat. He called it a bold attempt to blackmail the UN. In other words, they're threatening. China's basically threatening the world. Like, hey, if you do this, if you don't play by how we want to play, we're going to extend this war. We're going to get involved in it. Okay? And that has a tendency to make people a little uneasy, to say the least. Okay? Still, the president was cautious about making the giant mountain mad, talking about China. General MacArthur, on the other hand, had commented that the UN might as well take on China while they were dealing with Korea. This is MacArthur. He was ready to go ahead, defeat North Korea, and move right on into China and take them on also, because in his way of thinking was, they're going to become a world power. They're going to become a major military force to deal with. We might as well go hit them while we can. Okay? That was his thinking. Okay? So, Truman travels to Wake Island to speak face-to-face with and they refer to him as a quirky commander. He made it clear that engaging China was not on the U.S. agenda of things to do right now. So MacArthur was ordered to be very careful when pushing north of the 38th parallel. Okay? UN troops were to keep their distance from the Chinese border. Okay? So they're trying not to get into a major conflict with China China is just looking for an excuse to really to get involved in this thing because they don't want to lose North Korea to capitalism, if you would. They don't want it to be a free country. They want them to remain under communist control because, remember the map, you got China, and Korea kind of comes right down off of China. Well, North Korea is connected to China, right? Well, they don't want that to be a free country, okay? Because then you got a stronghold right next door to them, and they don't want that, okay? They don't want that. All right, go up just a little bit. All right, now MacArthur was very casual about the warning, and he actually scoffed at Truman's concern over the Chinese troops buildup. In other words, he kind of like, whatever, you know. I mean, he's one of those things. He's not really showing the president the respect that the president felt that he should have received. Okay, and he continues to speak of war with China. And the Chinese bases were supplying North Korea troops, so China was therefore, the general said, a valid target for UN bombers. As MacArthur talked and his UN troops continued to push north, then the Chinese starts activating their troops and bringing them down near the line. Okay, but Truman has told him basically, be quiet. Quit talking threats of war to China, and MacArthur is like, we're going to go get them. You know, he won't back down from his talk. Okay. Now, Chairman China went to Russia for help, so the Soviets sends in MiG-15s to give air support to communist troops. This is what Adam was talking about the other day. We're bringing in jet fighters. This is the first one.
F-86 Sabre.
Yep. Chinese army gathered on the Yalu River, and that's the border between China and Korea. Large units of Chinese soldiers started sneaking across the river. So the Chinese is basically, they're bringing troops into North Korea to fight, but they're not doing it in this big show. They're kind of sneaking them in, okay? Bringing them in a little at a time. So their presence is going to be there, but we're not, you know, it's not 600,000 troops are coming across the border at one time to make this, to do this fighting. Yes?
So basically, after we saw the Russians with MiG-16, we saw our P-51s, which were like, these aren't fast enough. They're just dropping us like flies. So we come up with the F-86 Sabre, which looked like the MiG-15.
Yeah.
But it was basically very...
Yeah, and then we eventually, and then we come up with what F-16, F-15, F-16.
No, the F-4.
F-4 is first, but then it is the 15 and 16 also comes into play here.
Yeah, and then in the
Late,
70s,
but it does come into
and
play.
then in the 70s, we get the F-18.
Yeah. All right.
History.
All right, let's lift it up just a little bit. All right. On October 19th, the UN troops captures the capital of North Korea. Okay. A week later, the North Korean countryside was suddenly swarming with Chinese troops. The Chinese struck with great force, and at the same time, they kept their huge numbers camouflaged. After inflicting painful losses on the ROK, remember that's the South Korean army, and the UN lines, the Chinese then faded into the woods and they hid in the mountains and then regrouped. So we're not 100% sure. It kind of took the UN by surprise. You had all these Chinese troops attack and won, and then they just disappeared. So everybody's like, wait a minute, what just happened here? They're not 100% sure yet that it was indeed the Chinese, but it becomes very obvious pretty quickly. Okay? So the UN forces continue to push towards the Chinese border. A month after their first attack, the Chinese launched yet another assault. This time it's 270,000 Chinese troops, and they caused major damage. The U.S. 8th Army was forced into the longest retreat of any Army unit ever. You understand, they were deep in North Korea at this point in time. One U.S. unit of 3,000 men was all but wiped out at Chuzan, okay? So almost 3,000 men were killed in this one battle, U.S. troops. And the 8th Army, you got to understand, the 8th Army was the United States at that point in time. It was the force to reckon with. And they just got their heads handed to them. Of course, they also 3,000 men against, you know, 270,000. Yeah.
Wait, is that the hill? Like the 130 something hill, and like they just wiped out everybody?
Yeah, pretty basically.
Oh my gosh, some guy got the middle of water at that battle.
Yep. All right, UN forces poured back to the northern port. Any ship that could be found was used to ferry 250,000 troops and civilians to safety, far to the south. And Seoul, again, follows to the communists. And remember, Seoul is the capital of South Korea. Now, it does set up near the 38th parallel, but it's still South Korea. But now North Korea is coming back down, taking over the south. Remember, they took over the south, pushed back, we go up, way up into the north. Now here it comes back down to the south. That's why it's called the never-ending war. It just has constant back and forth, back and forth. Okay, that's what was happening. Okay?
Russia.
Now, the outlook for the South was dark and blacker than ever, even the first grim days after the North Korean invasion. MacArthur starts muttering about the use of nuclear force. Okay? Members of nations in the UN forces were shocked and angered at this idea. They were confused by the mixed messages coming from the U.S. command, and they wondered exactly who was making the crucial decisions about the war. So finally, Truman had enough, and in April 1951, he fires MacArthur. He removes him from his duty.
You're falling.
Okay? This is where Matthew Ridgway becomes the new commander of the UN forces. He came to the top spot, fresh from leading the 8th Army. He breathed some new life into the Battle of 8th. In March, he had taken Seoul back from the communists, so here we go again. Under Ridgway's leadership, the UN troops gradually drove Chinese and North Korean armies back. By summer, the South was once again secure. The UN forces has ventured north of the 38th parallel once again. So now here we go. We're back up into the north. Okay? In July of 1951, soldiers in both parts of Korea cheered the news that peace talks was talking. Okay? Now this is July 1951. Peace talks starts. When does the war end?
53.
Yeah, July of 53. So the peace talks goes on for 2 years before peace is finally declared. Okay? Little did they know that it would take 2 weary years before the talk bore fruit. Finally, in 1953, a ceasefire was agreed upon. A demilitarized zone was formed along the 38th parallel. The DMZ, as it is called, is still in force today. It is guarded by North Korean troops on one side and ROK forces on the other. The tension of war can still be felt in the DMZ space, and that is true. So the fighting has stopped. A peace agreement was never actually signed. So technically the war between those two countries, North and South Korea, has never ended. They're still kind of, they don't like each other at all.
Basically,
Okay.
like fast forward about another
Okay.
century.
So-
We're having the same war again.
Wait, can I say bye?
Vietnam.
No. Holler, say bye.
Adios, amigos.
Bye. Say bye. Bye. They want to say bye.
I bet it's nice in your warm, cozy bed.
That's just wrong, wasn't it? All right. Bye, y'all.